Welcome to today's Explainer. I'm absolutely pumped to dive into a topic that honestly often feels like a black box to anyone outside the OR. We're going to demystify the incredible multidisciplinary orchestration required for safe surgery. It's a fascinating process, and it starts way before a patient even sets foot in the hospital and continues long after they head home. So let me ask you something. What actually keeps a surgical patient safe? When we think of surgery, our minds almost instantly jump to the brilliant surgeon and the scalpel. But as we'll see today, that scalpel, it's really just a tiny fraction of the overall surgical safety equation. True safety is this massive, beautifully choreographed system. All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The preoperative assessment. 2. The informed consent process. 3. Fasting and medication guidelines. 4. The EROS protocol. 5. Routine post-operative care. And finally, 6. Managing surgical complications. Section 1. The preoperative assessment. Evaluating risks before the scalpel. Let's get into it. Okay, so this first phase is crucial. It's where clinicians basically act like physiological detectives, figuring out if a patient is actually fit enough to handle the immense stress of an operation. Traditionally, we've relied on standard scoring tools, think ASA physical status or NSQIP calculators, to assess complication risks. But look, these conventional tools have limitations. They only factor in a handful of variables and can easily miss subtle interactions. Enter machine learning and AI. By crunching massive volumes of health data, AI uncovers incredibly complex patterns that are pretty much invisible to the naked clinical eye. It's an absolute game changer for predicting adverse outcomes for individual patients. So, what does this actually look like in practice? Well, if an AI model flags a patient is high risk for respiratory failure, it immediately triggers targeted preoperative optimization. We're talking things like inspiratory muscle training before the surgery even happens. AI is also brilliant at assessing frailty, that age-related decline in physiological reserves, which is a massive predictor of poor outcomes. It predicts which diabetic patients might struggle with glycemic control, prompting early endocrine consults. It can even flag patients at high risk for prolonged opioid use, triggering a referral to pain specialists right out of the gate. It's completely proactive rather than reactive. Moving on to Section 2, the informed consent process, the ethical foundation of surgery. Let's move our timeline forward to the critical legal and ethical step that absolutely must happen before a single intervention begins. Informed consent is the process ensuring a patient fully understands the risks, benefits, and alternatives of an intervention so they can make a truly autonomous decision. Look, proceeding without this valid consent puts the patient at risk of real harm. Plus, it leaves the medical team open to severe criticism, legal liability, and regulatory sanctions. It's simply non-negotiable. The crucial point here is understanding exactly what makes consent legally and ethically valid. According to the BMA guidelines, it comes down to a strict rule of 4. 1. The patient must actually have the capacity to make the decision. 2. They need sufficient information to make an informed choice. 3. They must be acting voluntarily, entirely free from any undue pressure. And 4. They have to be explicitly aware that they can refuse. Without all 4 of these elements, the consent just isn't valid. I wanted to include this quote from Smolensky because it really anchors the ethical weight of our discussion. Informed consent is the protection of self-sovereignty over one's own body. This isn't just about signing a piece of paper to keep hospital lawyers happy. It's the ultimate respect for patient autonomy. It's about empowering the patient, not just processing them. Section 3. Fasting and medication guidelines. Preparing the body physiologically. So consent is secure. Now we shift to the immediate physical prep required in the hours and days leading up to the OR. This timeline from the Oxford Handbook represents a critical safety measure. Before general anesthesia, a patient's stomach needs to be totally empty to prevent aspiration, which, as you know, is when stomach contents accidentally enter the lungs. The strict rule is a cessation of solid foods at least 6 hours prior to the operation. But, surprisingly to some, water or clear fluids like black tea or coffee are actually allowed up until 2 hours prior to the induction of anesthesia. Now, managing a patient's chronic daily meds before surgery, that is a real balancing act. Certain daily drugs have to be temporarily paused. For instance, blood pressure meds like RAS inhibitors are usually withheld to lower the risk of perioperative hypotension. Diabetic meds also need strict management, mostly because the patient is fasting. SGLT2 inhibitors pose a real risk for ketoacidosis during starvation, so those need to be stopped 3 to 4 days prior to elective surgery. Metformin is also often held because if the patient develops an acute kidney injury during surgery, continuing it can lead to dangerous lactic acidosis. Check out the steps laid out in this visual from KDIGO. When a patient enters a state of dehydrating illness or surgical fasting, the clinician has to first identify this state, then actively recall the list of high-risk pills, formally stop them, and finally, and this is the part that often gets missed, remember to recover and resume those medications once the patient is eating and drinking normally again. It's a workflow designed to ensure absolutely nothing slips through the cracks when a patient's routine gets disrupted. All right, Section 4, the ERAS Protocol, Enhanced Recovery After Surgery. So, it's the day of surgery, and we're officially through the hospital doors. Let's demystify a term you will hear constantly in modern surgery, ERAS, which stands for Enhanced Recovery After Surgery. ERAS isn't just one magic bullet. It's a comprehensive, evidence-based package of care. Preoperatively, it involves educating the patient on milestones and giving them a carb-loaded beverage 2 hours before surgery. Intraoperatively, it relies heavily on minimally invasive techniques, goal-directed fluid therapy, and multimodal opioid-sparing analgesia, basically using regional nerve blocks to cut down on heavy narcotics. It also explicitly calls for avoiding short-acting benzodiazepines in the elderly to fend off post-op delirium. By tackling both the psychological and physiological stress responses to major surgery, the impact of ERAS is literally revolutionary. It significantly reduces post-surgical complications, drastically lowers the length of the hospital stay, and slashes overall costs for the healthcare system. Most importantly, it gets patients back to their normal lives so much faster. Section 5. Routine post-operative care, the road to recovery. The operation might be over, but proactive management in the immediate post-operative period is absolutely crucial. There's a very specific logic connecting our post-op priorities here. The absolute linchpin, ensuring adequate pain control. Why? Because if you manage the pain well, the patient can actually get out of bed and mobilize earlier. And early mobilization is the silver bullet for preventing a massive cascade of other complications, like blood clots and pneumonia. Combine that with early oral intake, a multidisciplinary team checking in, and giving the patient realistic daily targets to hit, and you've got the perfect recipe for a swift recovery. Section 6. Managing surgical complications, classifying and addressing risks. But of course, we have to live in reality. Despite all these amazing protocols, things can and do go wrong. When assessing complications, clinicians rely on this mental scaffold from the Oxford Handbook. They classify risks by time, immediate, early, and late. Knowing when a complication is most likely to happen helps a doctor know exactly what to look for. For example, immediate issues usually tie back to the anesthetic or primary hemorrhage, whereas late complications might be something like an incisional hernia down the road. We also group complications by bodily system because post-op care demands a full-body assessment. Cardiorespiratory issues include atelectasis, DVTs, and pneumonia. On the gastrointestinal side, you're looking out for post-op ileus, where the bowel essentially goes to sleep, or a highly dangerous anastomotic leak. And then for skin and wounds, you have surgical site infections and wound dehiscence. I really want to highlight a highly specific, crucial detail regarding wound dehiscence, which, for a quick refresher, is when a surgical incision breaks open. The classic early warning sign here is a pink serous discharge leaking from the wound. If a clinician sees this, the golden rule is to always assume the defect involves the entire depth of the wound and prepare immediately for potential evisceration. You have to cover it with a sterile dressing, start IV antibiotics, and get ready for a likely return to the OR. Let's look at another super common clinical scenario, post-op pyrexia, or fever. A slight fever right after surgery isn't always an infection. Actually, in the first 48 hours, it's very often caused by atelectasis, the collapse of small lung airways. And the treatment for this? It's not antibiotics, it's physical movement and chest physiotherapy. That said, safety first. Clinicians must always keep a low threshold for a full infection screen. That means checking wounds, checking urine, and screening the legs for a DVT, which can totally cause a temperature spike. Wow, we've covered an incredible amount of ground today. We tracked the surgical patient from their initial AI-assisted risk assessment through the ethics of consent, the precision of fasting, those revolutionary ERAS pathways, all the way to vigilant post-operative care. It leaves us with a pretty thrilling question to end on. How will the continued integration of predictive AI models and even more advanced ERAS protocols redefine the very limits of surgical recovery in the next decade? The machinery of patient safety is evolving at breakneck speed, and the future of surgery looks remarkably bright. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.